Welcome to the Understanding Boys podcast. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, the Boonwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to their leaders past, present and emerging. The Understanding Boys podcast is a series of conversations exploring what it is to be a good man these days. And if you had a story that you could tell a boy of say 14 and he'd listen, what would that story be? And that's really what I'm asking our guests today. I'm Dr. Ray Swann, and we're a community of teachers and parents concerned with the education and growth of boys and young men in the modern world. This series is brought to you by Brighton Grammar, an all-boys school in Melbourne. To learn more about the podcast, please visit understandingboys.com.au. Today's podcast, we welcome back psychologist and parenting expert Megan Beyer. In the podcast, we talk about her book, and in particular the final chapter, which looks at the role of nature in a post-pandemic world. She shares some tips around managing your son's anger, and I hope you enjoy the podcast today. In today's podcast, we have Megan Beyer. Megan, you have the record now of being our first return guest on Understanding Boys. Welcome back. It's been a while since we've chatted, but welcome back, and thanks for your time again today.
Well, it's a real privilege to be back with you, Ray, and I always enjoy talking to you. So thank you for inviting me back. And I do have some new content
Absolutely.
to share.
Well, firstly, congratulations on the book. For those that aren't aware, Megan's new book, How to Raise a Man, a Modern Mother's Guide to Parenting Her Teenage Son, is absolutely fantastic. And we're going to, in today's podcast, delve a little bit into that, talk a bit about some of the strategies that some people who are familiar with your work may be aware of, but there's some really great new stuff as well. And, I guess a good place for us to start is possibly with the new stuff. And to that end, thinking about since we last time I spoke to you, South Africa was in the midst of a drought, nearly ran out of water in your town, and we talked about that. And since then, we've had a global pandemic, and I know down here in Australia, we're still having we're doing quite well, but still having challenges with new strains and new variants. And I imagine, and I've heard, in fact, over in South Africa, there are new strains and variants of COVID-19 coming out. How are people coping over in your neck of the woods?
So, Ray, look, I mean, it would be absolutely amiss for me to say, people are getting on and coping and making do. That it really is not true. I mean, people have battled. And at the beginning, I was dealing with a lot of mothers groups. I kind of had set up lots of free webinars. Radios were having me, broadcast tips the whole time. And families were doing incredibly well. They were being inventive, creative, having quizzes online with other families, doing gym classes, singing classes, dance classes. And families were reporting, it's the first time we've been together like this. We were in complete lockdown in South Africa, but it's the first time we've really been all together and we're really getting together. I'm teaching my son how to bake, and, my daughter's gymming up a storm because, her brothers brought her into it. And those were awesome stories. But of course, then it just went on and on and on and on. And people's morale fell down. As we know, teenagers have an evolutionary impulse for independence, to be away from their parents, to keep, try and get a life for themselves outside of the home. And then suddenly they can't. My boys who have left home and have their careers are suddenly spending more time with me, and we now doing more and more and more stuff together, which was amazing for us as parents, but very limiting for our young adults and our teenagers. So what has happened now is we're seeing huge mental health issues, not only in South Africa, but right around the world, that we're seeing levels of anxiety, depression rise. We've certainly seen, we had rising suicide rates actually before COVID, and now that trend has sadly just continued because teenagers are reporting, well, what's it all about, and where's the meaning in life, and how, what's the future hold for us. And I think as parents, when we start despairing and giving up hope, and tension really starts grabbing hold of us in a powerful way, then our teenagers feel that as well. And then they are cued by the way we are handling things. So I have really tried to support parents in using the surefire wellness tips that are scientifically improved to lift your mood, to lift your spirits, to help your immune system, to help your resilience. And over, I mean, I have said to parents, well, if you're not breathing correctly, you've got to be breathing now. If you can go and stand barefoot in nature, ground yourself, say to yourself, go and do it. Do your online yoga class. Absolutely get your sleep right, And I was going, really, I've been harping on a lot about the absolute basics. Get your eating right, cut out sugar. I have totally cut out sugar. Can you believe it? I mean, it was the toughest thing to do.
That's a big move.
But wow. Has it helped me? It's helped my energy levels.
And what do you notice?
It's definitely helped my energy levels. I don't feel mood kind of swings and that afternoon slump. I'm not looking to sugar as a comfort. I'm really facing my feelings and being able to say, all right, this is a real feeling. I can't just reach for, a sugary cookie or a cake to soothe myself. I must soothe myself by listening into my feelings, being able to feel through them, breathe, let it go. So sugar is a menace, and we are eating more carbohydrates, we're eating more sugar because of the panic we're feeling in our systems. And we have got to absolutely, as parents and caregivers and guardians of our homes and kids, we have got to dig deep and recognize there is help and surefire tips that we can use to calm our nervous systems. We are first and foremost human beings with bodies, and these bodies need to be looked after. And once we start really caring and showing compassion and pampering towards our body, the wisdom that is within it begins to support us, and then we can be good examples for our children. Of course, I'm happy to share whatever other wellness tips you want me to talk about, because I have thrown myself into it, Ray, to be able to be that support, not only for my own family, but for others, because as we've got to grow up as adults and be the adult in the home and lead the way. I genuinely believe that. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to kind of almost finally do it. It's the same with the sugar. Well, I'm not going to give up sugar. When am I going to give up sugar? I can give it up now, and use my own discipline and my own curiosity to get me to achieve that goal.
So it's almost like you're saying there's layers. The first layer is the self and our ability to care for ourselves and building our own self-compassion, leading for us to be better parents and help our kids and our boys more effectively, but also from an abundant way of being, as opposed to one where we're constantly needing to kind of prop ourselves up. And the next layer you were talking about there, which I'd love to explore, and it's in your book in terms of looking to nature for answers in a post-pandemic world, is about nature. But it was fascinating to me, just even in looking at, the sales, like people buying more, there's more higher consumerism, for those that are able to, afford it, haven't been affected as financially as others, but people are generally spending more. And alcohol sales have gone up in Australia 27%, which is remarkable. So there's more people at home spending more, drinking more, possibly eating more. I'm speculating there. But these things aren't necessarily, certainly from what you're saying in terms of the research evidence into better ways of being and healthier ways of being, aren't really supporting us as we continue to be strained by the impact of COVID. We've got kids that are trying to define themselves and find their own ways being forced to stay with us longer in, social networks that otherwise they might want to escape it from.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have a real choice here, and it sounds so simple when I say it, but it is powerful. We have a real choice. We can choose right now to build our homes and create a loving, healthy base for our children, or we can choose to be destructive and go down the rabbit hole of fear and anxiety. And it really is a choice. And once you make that choice, then there are principles and tips that you can put in place that absolutely work. We don't have to go digging in the dark as to what helps our mood, what helps sustain our bodies, what helps sustain a healthy mind and a healthy heart. Wellness is so evolved these days that there are very real things we can do that are quite basic, that any parent listening could start right now. And really, Ray, we could start with our breath. And by really beginning to breathe right and breathing right down deep into the belly. And I'm very big on the out breath. And if you can slow down that out breath, then you can begin to calm the system down. The second thing you can do is take your shoes off and begin to feel your feet. There's a part of the brain that lights up the moment we bring awareness into our body, and the feet is the easiest way to do it, because whether you're sitting or standing, your feet are on the ground. So you can take your shoes off and begin to actually feel your toes and your feet and feel the weight of your body, and then combine that with the breath. There already you're beginning to become more present. But let's hop into this nature chapter I wrote. So, Ray, you may not even know, but I went back to university later in life and I studied ecology, and I did a master's in ecology. So I truly am an eco-psychologist, because I've got an ecology degree and a psychology degree. And I was fascinated in discovering that nature has principles that nature operates by. And these principles have been working and have been evolving and being developed by nature over millions of years. The first sign of life on our planet, of course it was one tiny little single cell, was 3.4 billion years ago. So life itself has been creating and recreating itself and experimenting for so many billions of years in very adverse circumstances. So nature, let's call it herself. I love the word Mother Nature. It gives you this very encompassing feeling that we are being fed and nourished and brought into life, by the earth and nature itself. So nature herself has developed survival mechanisms, but not only survival mechanisms, actual principles that helps life not only survive, but thrive and evolve. And if we begin to tap into those principles of nature and then apply it to our parenting in our homes, it's my sense, how can we then go wrong? We may be in very, very uncertain times. So we start looking around and saying, goodness me, is my job going to fail? Am I still going to have a roof over my head? I'm going to be able to pay my school fees? What do I tell my kids? And we can start going into that panic, or we can really fall back onto this idea that we come from the earth. We are brothers and sisters and children of the earth. We have learned the wisdom of Mother Nature through our evolution, and it's within us, it's within our body, it's within our minds, it's within our systems. And it's a case of kind of almost rewilding ourselves to go back in and draw on this strength of nature. So let me jump right in. I mean, obviously, people think when I talk about nature, all I'm referring to is, get out there in the wilds, get your feet in the mud, and look at the stars, look at the clouds, look at the examples of trees and animals. Yes, do that, and enjoy that and absorb it. But do open your eyes with awe and wonder. Don't just go out there to use nature as a utility. Like, now nature's is going to give to me. Let me go and get what I need from nature. I mean, we're already doing that with all of nature's resources. We don't need to do that with our consciousness and our hearts as well. So, yes, it is all that. And is it about, recycling at home and running sustainable homes and helping our children be more green and helping our children find causes that support not only animals, but conservation projects? Yes, please do all that. What I'm talking about is a little bit deeper. It's that nature can help us to raise our consciousness into higher order values. We can become more compassionate, more open, more engaged, more participatory human beings who find meaning in life by being able to absorb what nature has to teach us. And just by being in nature, by taking our kids outside, taking them off the screens, switching off from observing life through screens, and actually begin to participate and engage and connect with that. Just by our children doing that, and those amazing projects that your school does of taking the boys out and into nature experiences and rituals in nature, just by doing that, without even teaching them anything, they will start becoming more empathic and more compassionate human beings. Now, that is proven, right? That just by being in nature, we become more compassionate, empathic human beings before anyone's even taught you how to. So that is, of course, like absolutely remarkable. Our nervous systems calm down, and the moment our nervous systems calm down, we can open our hearts more. And now let's go a little closer and a little deeper and recognize that in nature, everything is always in relationship. Anything in an ecosystem that you walk out into that is not in relationship, the soil's in relationship with its microorganisms, the birds are in relationship, with the trees and the bugs, the root systems in relationship, with the fungi under the soil, and everything is forever interdependent and interlinked and working as one great web of life. So there's the first lesson we can use in our homes: is not see our family as this kind of separate entity, or our son with his problems as this embarrassment, to our, to ourselves, or what's got into him, and stop seeing everything as individual problems and individual families, and recognize that we are a part of the whole, and that we need to operate in these community systems where we reach out to each other for help, that we're more authentic and open about what we need, and that there's not just one single problem, like my son has braces and that's why he's depressed. We can no longer do that causal thing, because nature shows us everything's about cycles, phases, and interdependence. And there's so many interconnections that at the end of the day, it's quite a mystery. And we rather need to open to the context, looking at a larger context, and be much more contextual and say, well, actually, I don't fully understand why you are so depressed right now. It could be a number of things that are playing in to this real slump that you're feeling and going through. But let's be together in this. Let's try and work this out together. Let's reach out for help so that we can understand more about the context. We can't just single out one thing. So I think that's a major lesson that we can learn from nature's principles.
I might just jump in there. I mean, you've given us a lot to think about. I just wanted to unpick it a little bit with you. As a parent sitting here, I'm thinking, okay, so by way of summary, we're interconnected, that there's wisdom in nature. And I loved in the book where you talked about how simple steps are repeated until a more complex order emerges. And what Megan writes about is, by observing things that, we can see, for example, birds flying in V formation, these things that are actually appearing in nature can cause us wonder, but then a more complex system can emerge, and an understanding of a more complex system can emerge from that. And I think that really speaks to the wisdom of what you're suggesting around something like depression for kids, and understanding it's not just because of one factor. There's a number of interconnected things that may be going on. But Megan, I'm curious, just at a practical level, how does, if I'm a parent and I'm in a lockdown and, I think, oh, wow, yeah, I'd love to, go out and be in nature, but I can't because at the moment in Melbourne, we're back in a lockdown and we can only travel 5 kilometres, which isn't very far. What are some really basic principles that we can apply in terms of nature and being observational? One that comes to mind, someone once taught me, was simply just going outside and putting your hands on the ground and really feeling the earth, even in a small patch of ground, and actually doing some deep breathing can help ground you and make you feel different. I notice over the times
100%.
I've done that, and I find that as a really easy thing, particularly if my kids are really, really cross. We just go outside and just wouldn't even be discussion and just be like, let's put our hands on the ground, just take some deep breaths and settle and connect. Do you have any other, simple practical things that parents can do around nature to help build that wisdom?
Yes. The first thing before we jump there, I just want to come back to small, simple steps leading to complexities. So some of the things that parents can do is set intentions and then link their intentions, their parent intention, to their values, and work with those small, simple steps and recognize that it will broaden out into a wider context in more general life. So if you decide my value is that we speak kindly to each other, and that's going to be our family value, because my intention is that we have more communication and togetherness. That's my intention. So one of the values I'm going to use is kindness, and we're going to focus on that, over this next month or this next week. And that leads to a crescendo of possibilities. So, and that's how nature works. You start with one small little step, and it really evolves into a whole career your son may have as a result of one little step and one little value he learned in his home. So, and then now here's some tips. So the first thing is you can always look out of a window, always. And you can look at the sky and you can look at the clouds. And while you're busy doing that, is to really open to the light and recognize that everything in nature is growing towards the light, and your heart and your soul can do that too. And that's uplifting. And you just breathe and look at the sky and the expansiveness of the sky and the stillness. The beautiful thing to do with kids is to take them outside with a sleeping bag or duvet and lie on your back at night and look at the stars together. And you literally just lie there. So anyone who can see a few stars, if you're probably a little bit out of the city, or switch all your outside lights off, that's a beautiful experience. The other experience is to walk outside, close your eyes, and notice if you can hear natural sounds and sense into how far away they are, what could it possibly be, where could it be coming from. Feel the wind feel the breeze, feel the air on your skin, and that can just be a small patch of garden. The other thing is, do start planting something. I mean, every therapist is telling their clients this right now. But honestly, plant something, even if it's just in a pot, but your hand must be in that soil. And then, germinate a seed, help your kids to germinate a seed, and then plant it in the pot and see it go, because that's a real reminder of life being conducive to life. The other thing I love doing is really being able to walk around your house with your shoes off. And if you have any tendency to be able to take your clothes off, because I think getting back to ourselves as bodies, as human beings that are actually connected to the animal kingdom, and part of that, it brings us back to a deeper meaning. It's something about just giving us a sense of meaning outside of these chairs and these desks and these screens and these devices that we're using, that there's a naturalness that just happens around our bodies and our breaths. But I also love anything that is uplifting, and if you can do it outside, that's fantastic. So dancing or singing or jumping or exercise or any sort of movement is going to really help you and your family and be a little wacky, so that you can have a laugh. We need that so badly right now.
It's so obvious in a way, isn't it, that, this is how we are. We're connected human beings who need to be authentic, that when we think of the great times in our life, often they're the moments with other people. We talk about, we don't remember what people said, we remember how they made us feel. We talk about, the moments that we shared together and what was happening in those spaces and places. And I think what your advice really speaks to is slowing things down, becoming more aware, and maybe dropping some of the things that are kind of layered up on us. I think particularly around technology, a lot of what you're speaking to reminds me so much of the challenge of technology. There's a denseness to technology. There's such a high impact on our, on our imagery and our dreaming that we use in life. I think we're driven by these kind of basic primary symbols. You talked about the great, that Mother Earth, or, being in the sun, or, feeling connected to the ground. I mean, these are primary things that we understand and that we feel at a very deep level that are beyond words, actually. I think the symbols almost sit behind the words. And then if we can tap back into those, but in technology where we've got interference with our connection to those basic symbols that help clarify who we are, because it's just always being rained upon with another image and another thing and another should, and you should be this and it looks like that. And I think that really breeds a lot of confusion and separation, actually. It's such a paradox that we live in a world where we're so connected. You and I are chatting, thousands of kilometers in different time zones. It's incredible that we can do this. It's beautiful. It's amazing then in turn we can connect you to our listeners. But at the same time, that same power is the power that's making us feel so isolated and so disconnected and so alone and so inferior.
Just a huge tip for people who are on IT all the time, and like we are now, and I'm doing it right now, Ray. I don't just look at you. I feel my butt on the chair. I feel my feet on the floor. I always take my shoes off. I notice my breath. I'm in my body while I'm chatting to you. I'm trying to feel around my heart space to kind of feel into what's happening with my feelings right now, and even what's happening with my breath. So I am really remaining a feeling, embodied human being, even through this process. And that brings me a lot of meaning. And I hope it also means that I connect with you and I connect with the listeners to some extent in a more genuine, authentic way. And and therefore it's useful. It's useful for all of us to kind of feel better and more connected with each other. I wanted to say to you, there's a very simple thing that people who work with attention deficit and children were using at one stage, and I don't know if they're still using it, and it really helped these kids. Used to say to these kids who were kind of really spaced out and just so energetic and distracted, go and sit on the floor and put your back against the wall right now. Go and do that. And I'll sit with you. And I'll sit with you on the floor with your back against the wall. And that used to help kids calm down. And therein, again, is the simple embodied thing where you actually feel a strong surface against your back. You feel the weight of your body on the earth, and it literally can help calm you down. And it's such a simple thing, but it is about remembering to be embodied. So yes, technology is not going away. We're going to have to keep on using it. We have to do this. I'm enjoying speaking to you, and I certainly hope that this podcast brings a new idea or something that uplifts a parent to just try something that's quite simple but useful for them in their homes. So yes, we are going to keep doing this, but I think we can start doing it in a different way, and remembering that we are embodied beings.
Yeah, and if you take that to this conversation, say an online conversation, I'm just thinking in teaching, how much we rely on creating an environment where people feel safe and that they're seen as well, and that there's a recognition that people are at different ages and stages with where they're at with certain knowledge, and some things they're stronger at and some things they need help with. But I think the advice that you were just saying about as we all spend so much time online, just being a bit more intentional and aware of our online presence, not only in what we're projecting outwards, but actually what we're actually being with as we sit and talk to others about coming back to who we are and taking a moment. You're expressing, feeling how you feel as we speak. I think really does help and makes it a more authentic and genuine conversation. I think that also helps to build connections to others. My brother works in corporate finance, and he was sharing a story with me the other day about just in a sales exchange, and just a genuine connection that he had with a client around some of the challenges, and just how that kind of led to other things. So it's still possible, isn't it, for us to make these genuine connections even in these environments that are really different. We ran a program last year at the school that I work at with parents and boys around transition, looking at that sort of key age, like a rite of passage. And we used Zoom as a delivery because we're all in lockdown, and we're really debating about, whether should we run this program or not. And we did a lot of thinking, a lot of training, did a lot of research into, the effect, balancing out how much time online versus how much time together, and would it work? And we sort of agreed that it was still worth doing. And we didn't really know all the outcomes for it. But one of the outcomes that was quite amazing was actually in this environment, you do feel like people are really listening to you. It's very transparent when you've got faces staring at you on the screen. It's very clear that people are there as well. So it's not all bad at all, but it's just new. And, as we bumble through life, sometimes it is worth just slowing down and paying attention to the little cues that are happening around us that maybe ordinarily in life we need to, and that we just are used to because we're socialized and, we grow up in families or we grow up in societies, and we kind of get what a look means, or what another cue that isn't necessarily said, what that means in a conversation. We don't necessarily have that in this environment. We need to rediscover them, but we also need to bring an intention to rediscover those, and an intention to be aware of what the cues are and to use them and to be fully ourselves in those moments. as parents, but also as people that are connected to others.
I agree with what you're saying. And we also as parents must not forget that our children and our teenagers right now need more emotional comfort. And emotional comfort comes through very simple things. It's like sitting together on a couch. So if you are going to sit together and game or watch a movie, then sit together. Be conscious of the fact that you are hanging out together and make it cozy and comfortable, and a cup of sugar-free hot chocolate or whatever you can. Sorry, I'm making a joke, but make it comfortable and be conscious, but be much more conscious of it. Hug more, tell stories more, share how you're feeling more, ask your kids how they're feeling more. And it's the absolute basics that are absolutely right, just so incredibly important right now, because of the kind of almost cold, dislocated lives that we are leading. There needs to be more heartfelt stuff. Ray, I think you did want to refer to something else in our book, and I'm aware that our time is probably running out. So I don't know if you want me to kind of jump into just saying to you, one of the most popular chapters at the moment has been looking at bad moods with teenagers.
Well, it is. You're absolutely right.
And it really has been so popular because people are saying, well, I'm seeing more aggressive behavior. I'm seeing more bad moods. How do I handle that? And of course, with conscious parenting, the first thing as parents is that we need to self-regulate. So self-regulate is the very first big tip. So be aware that any anger is contagious. So if I lose it right now and become angry with you, your anger is going to raise in your system. It is, our bodies are geared, our minds are geared and wired like that. So anger is contagious, and it takes discipline for us as parents to be able to take that deep breath and say, well, just because my teenager's in a bad mood and angry doesn't mean that I now have to be in a bad mood and angry, and calm ourselves down first. The second thing we need to say to ourselves is, don't take this personally. Don't take it personally. He's angry.
Hard not to sometimes,
he's going through a bad mood. We don't have to take it as, a jab at ourselves or feel the hurt and the pain of his anger. So somehow we've got to find it in ourselves to recognize this is the little bull behavior, and we are actually meant to be the big bull, and so this is little bull behavior, and we need to stay the kind of calm and wise side. So that's the first thing. I see. I refer to Arnie Rubenstein in this chapter. That's interesting, isn't he? He's Australian, right? Isn't he?
Yeah. In fact, he's our previous guest on this podcast, actually.
So I refer to him in chapter on that 161, where he talks about healthy family relationships are key. Yet boys also need recognition for their talents and to understand the transition they're going through. So understand that, this kind of anger and disruptiveness is going to come up in the teenage years. I then go on to say strategies to deal with your son's aggressiveness is, first and foremost, obviously, listen to him, but listen to him absolutely attune to him by being present and pay attention to the smaller cues. Forgiveness is key to getting through and getting over anger. So if there's high-flying temper, you lose it, he loses it, say you're sorry. Just please say you're sorry. And if he says he's sorry, learn to practice forgiveness and be able to let that go. We have got to stop being the aggressive ones in the home. So if you are in a violent home, if dad's losing it, if you're yelling all the time, begin to manage yourself and self-regulate and calm yourself down. Obviously, a boy is going to follow the examples he sees in his home. So we've got to lead by example. We need to teach our boys anger management, and that is very simple. We need to teach them how to deep breathe. We've got to teach them to separate venting from feeling angry. So venting is the energy of anger. And all of us know what venting is. We're either yelling or throwing or punching or, going red in the face and wanting to scream. Venting is the energy of anger, and feeling angry. There's nothing wrong with feeling angry. It can be quite motivating, but we've got to get the venting out. So go and vent somewhere else. Don't vent at your son. And you can teach your son not to vent at you. They're saying, okay, I can see you're angry. Don't vent it at me. Go and vent somewhere else by taking a cold shower or going for a run or doing some deep breathing or go and throw a basketball through the hoop a few times. And then let's come back and let's talk about your anger. So that is important. Don't insult your teenager's character by telling him he's just a rotten, awful human being. Make sure that no matter what's going on and no matter how angry you are and how upset you are, make sure he knows that you love him and that you might not like the behavior he's doing, but you still absolutely love him and you're connected to him and you're going to sort this out together. And then, of course, demonstrate problem-solving skills. So boys are always emboldened, strengthened by having a task and being able to find a solution to something. And as a parent of a teenager, you need to say, all right, you need to find the solution. See if you can work out what the next steps are. And then let's sit down and talk through what the next steps are. Don't just tell them how to solve the problem. Say, go and think about it. Go and write it down. Go and think about it. Go and talk to a friend. And then come back and let's see the steps. If you say to him, come back and let me know if you've managed to sort this out, guaranteed a teenager won't come back and let you know. So don't be disappointed with that. As a parent, you follow up and just say, I was thinking about that problem. Have you sorted out? He's going to say, yeah, chill, I'm fine. It's all sorted. Say, no, I'd like to know the solution that you discovered, because next time this comes up, we want to know that you know how to deal with it. So learn how to lean in, really learn how to lean in with your son, and don't just let him off the hook. Get him to be responsible, to actually begin to work and solve the difficulties he has. Does that help, Ray?
Absolutely. And look, it's such key, isn't it? I mean, we want our kids to grow into people that know how to manage conflict and their emotions and anger, particularly the more negative at times or the more pointy end of the spectrum. So I think this is really fantastic advice, Megan. And look, I just want to take the opportunity to thank you again for your time this evening for you and this morning for me. Megan's book, How to Raise a Man, The Modern Mother's Guide to Parenting Her Teenage Son, is a fantastic book, highly recommended. And if you are a listener and you're able to tune into the Understanding Boys website, we'll provide you with some further links, a bit about Megan's work this year. She's going to be doing some work in Australia, and also a giveaways. We're going to run a little competition with some of her books that'll be available for our listeners. So if you want to get into understandingboys.com.au, you can find more there. But for the meanwhile, until our next conversation, Megan, I suspect there may be another one. I'm not sure if there's another book coming out, but certainly I feel like we could talk for a lot longer. Thank you again on behalf of all of us here at Understanding Boys.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you so much, Ray. I so enjoyed being here with you, and I hope there's some nuggets that are going to be worthwhile for moms during COVID.
We hope you've enjoyed this Understanding Boys podcast. Make sure you subscribe on your podcast app, and please leave us a review to help grow the community. For more information about the podcast, please visit understandingboys.com.au. Until next time, thanks for listening.